La musique. Merci. Wow. So tonight we have about 400 registered attendees. It's yet another record for the French Tech in London. So thank you. It has been 3 years now that we applied to start the French Tech community in London. And in the database, we are about 2,000 members, very active. So again, thank you. You are the community. Thank you. Thank you very much for attending tonight. So I'm Albin Servian. I'm running the French Tech here. It's a teamwork. So all the team is here tonight. We have, they will be all on stage. Raph Crouan, CEO of Startup Bootcamp IoT. We have Xavier Louis, the CEO founder of PIC, also Florence Gomez, the unique French MD of the French Chamber of Commerce in the UK. We have Loïc Dumas, also the founder of Frog Valley. We have Pierre-Frédéric Jaff, which is the Chief Data and AI Officer at Microsoft, a bit of JAFAM, etc. So the team is here. So tonight, it's all about scale up. Every time, even the slides are getting bigger. So as you can see, France is scaling up. A few months ago, I wrote an article reading about a study produced by Le Cercle d'Outremanche, which was about scale up it's fine, but startup is fine, but scale up is even better. So that's what it's all about tonight, scaling up France as a startup nation. So tonight, I will be the MC to celebrate France as a startup scale-up nation. This event is under the high patronage of French President Emmanuel Macron. And it will be represented tonight by Mounir Mahjoubi, the Secretary of State for Digital Affairs. And he will join in a few minutes. He's coming from the embassy right now. So without further ado, please welcome former CEO of Apple Europe, the founder of C4 Ventures, the chairman of the board of Business France, and the ambassador of France for international investment. So please welcome legendary Pascal Cagny on stage.
I hope, you're listening. So I'm going to give you a quick brainwash of 68 slides. And we brought it down from 90 to 68. But I'm especially pleased to be here because I've been living with my beautiful daughters, Ines out there, 14 years in London. And each time I come back is a real privilege. I'm a tax French refugee in Paris for a year and a half more. I enjoy it, but I enjoy it even more when I come to see you all. So what is the job today is essentially to talk about what we're all doing. And for that, I'm going to essentially briefly talk to you about Business France, because I think we still have a huge deficit of image. And for that, I just wanted to summarize briefly what is about essentially this agency. It's a public-private agency which is doing 3 jobs. The exports, helping actually small, medium-sized company to export. In this respect, every year, Pierrick, which I'm going to introduce in a minute, has been mentioning to me that there is 150 companies which are supported when they come to France, to UK. We also deal with image and invest. Invest is really about the red carpet that we bring to all and in each and any of the investor which wants to come in France. The concept is that we are essentially duplicating the diplomacy network, where we got 63 offices and covering all the world. You know that France do have what we call a universal networks, and that's what we're doing. But most importantly, lately over the years, France, or Business France, has been really here to help to promote the French tech and the ecosystems. And the early days of that, I'm so pleased to be welcomed here with by Albin. We have now a presence that the world essentially envy us, right? The Germans, the Italians, I don't know about the English, are definitely looking at French tech as a huge success, and we should be all proud of this. Now, once I said that, I couldn't basically not introduce you the new boss of Business France here in UK, which is Pierrick. Pierrick, would you mind to stand? We can even give him a round of applause so that Pierrick and Rafaela, you should also stand up. Rafaela, which come from Singapore. They are a fantastic team. They've been doing this for basically many years, multiple countries, and invite you to basically connect with them at the end of these sessions. Now, while you expect I'm going to talk to you about scale-up, I thought I should enjoy myself by sharing with you some amazing slides. And I could not do that in order to put in perspective what we're trying to do in France, which is a true, real renaissance. We live in a world where we got an amazing accelerations. You all know about these slides, which is the same slide I was showing with Mr. Al Gore back in 2007 when he launched his Inconvenient Truth movements, essentially. That's one of the big challenges that we have today throughout the world. We've got also a challenge which is actually an opportunity, the fact that technology is getting harder and harder. But we got also, and the time has come to really talk about that, and I didn't put these slides just because of the yellow gilets. We got also all of that is leading to a boom of inequalities. And to explain that, you see here the growth of overall income, and what you see is that the top 1% is taking 27% of this total growth, where in fact the bottom 50% only take 12%. There is many ways to express that. That's the one we choose tonight. But that's also something that we need, and we in the tech, which has been the forerunner of all of that, needs to really take into account. But there is more to it. There is also a rising hostility and concern against and towards technology. This is the front cover of the Economist, which I love to take because I think they illustrate marvelously well what's happening in the world. Artificial intelligence is seen as an issue. The new titans in the world also see sometimes as a concern, and obviously we always talk about safe a non-safe computer. But you got also lately a strong hostility against liberalism and multilateralism, which is illustrated once more with this beautiful cover. And lately, that's really a fact of the last 1 to 3 years, this amazing divided Europe. You should have been in Italy on the 4th of March this year to understand what's happening in Italy, in Europe actually, which is something very concerning. Now in all of that chaos, we the French, like always, we were a little singular, right? We had a new context giving France a key role with this concept of a startup nations. And Albin insisted that go back to you to just recall and put back top of your mind what happens over the last 12 to 15 months. The first one, we need to understand that you had a massive political landscape change, something that no other democracy in Europe have seen ever for the last 40 to 50 years. 75% of the total assembly has been changed new. The number of ladies in the assembly were moving from essentially a mere 20% to 40%, and we had a younger representative of the populations. It didn't help to connect with our populations, as we're demonstrating the last 2 to 3 weeks, but still it's something we need to take into account. The second core thing that happens was a massive social transformations, massive, with the 36 decrees, where today all the investors looked at us and tell us, wow, you've done it. Flexibility is there, and you can effectively hire and reallocate resources in a much easier way. We also did something which is unexpected, unseen, which is moving the corporate rate tax from 33 to 25%, having a flat tax of 30%, something much simpler and straightforward, less than any of the guy in the US or typically one in California. And we also reduced the cost of human capital with the CIS. Last but not least, I'm going to quick tonight, we got also a reallocation of investments towards essentially the skilling of the workforce, the ecological transitions, the e-states, which I'm sure Monique can talk about, and also the innovations. Now, you thought that we could have been done and finished, but in fact, Albin, we had another run. On the 5th of September, the governments explained that we didn't do all of this just to stop here. The concept was that we're going to continue with clear view of the Loi Pacte, which is going to be very impacting for us in the tech ecosystems, reforms of the pensions and some others. Now, through all of this, in just 12 months, 15 months, France became a hope to address some of these world challenges. In just a year, we took 25 points when asked the question, do you perceive France as attractive destinations for the company? Again, when Brice Teinturier at Ipsos looked at these figures, on a sample of 600 people, he couldn't believe it. He thought there is a mistake somewhere, right? Never ever you switch in 220 working days, 365 days, a country image as quickly as that. And yes, we've been able to attract back a year ago, essentially at Versailles, 140 of the top CEOs to basically brainwash them about the change we're conducting and explaining that they should come over to our place. And yes, at Business France, in our Invest group, right, Rafaela, we were able to show the best result ever in a decade with a 16% increase year on year on all of that. Better. Now, the same guy which were showing that France are asking whether or not France was the issue of the time bomb at the heart of Europe, the Economist decided back a year ago that France was back. Now, you and I, we know that the story was so good, so nice, that image is fragile and it couldn't basically last so long. No, what we've seen lately is essentially the Yellow Vest, 30 years in the making. We're essentially paying maybe a lack of communications and definitely some errors, but essentially the fact that for damn 20 to 30 years, we have been so complacent with ourselves, and we had a political class which have been complacent with too many groups and lobbies. Now, having the privilege to move from London to France, I also had the great idea to live very close to the Kléber Avenue. And when I lived on the 1st of December and the 8th of December was something which was possibly a legitimate anger, and definitely it is a legitimate anger when you are into the poor people of France, to an unseen violence, right? That's the image that I've been seeing by my own eyes. Not once, not twice, but 3 times actually. So while you and I, we thought that the French bashing was a tradition which was about to be forgotten, right? Guess what? Right, we're back to it. We're back to it with this amazing cover all around the place. And the question is whether or not a French Renaissance can be stopped. Now, I'm here to tell you that the crazy man I've been, choosing Apple for Dell, always going to the underdog and the David against the Goliath, telling you that more than ever we need you, this amazing crowd of the French Tech 400 people, to focus on continuing to basically build the magical quadrants. And life is very simple, right? We want to be first an open and welcoming country. We want to be an open and welcoming country for one reason. 1% of the companies in France are international, but they represent 10% of the job, 22% of the R&D, and 30% of the exports. You need to understand that 1 out of 4 jobs or sites, industrial sites, 1 out of 5, when you look at the 28 European countries, when they come in Europe, 1 out of 5 come in Europe. In France, sorry. 1 out of 5 of the logistics centers come in France. 1 out of 5 of the R&D center come in France. So we're doing extremely well already. So we need to be welcoming. That's what we need to do, a welcoming and open. The son of an immigrant that I am, right? It's Italian, Cagni is not definitely German or anything else, right? Needs to tell you that we need to basically play on this one. The second one, we need to continue to position ourselves as an innovative country. For that, we've got some unique skills and assets. We've got 1 million engineers, as many as the Germans, 260,000 researchers, 38,000 graduate engineers per year, like a clock, 75 PhD, out of which 40% of them are foreigners. We've got the Nobel Prize, and we've got 1/4 of the field, right middle fields, which is essentially the Nobel Prize for maths. We've got some of the best institute. The third 4 elements of this quadrant is the next battle. And you will see us, even the French Tech, Albin talk a lot, which is the Rev 4.0, and the ability to basically go back to our industry, shake it up, to recreate more jobs. And the first time in 15 years, we lost 25% of a job in industry over the last 15 years. This last year, it was the first time ever that we create actually more job in industry that we lost, and that you have more opening of industrial sites that we had basically a closing. So all of that is assets, and this is essentially the strategy that our president can repeat time after time, with the last and 4th core quadrants into this magical quadrant, which is essentially this new entrepreneur culture. 5 years ago, when you were asking 18 to 25 years old kids, or young guys, or young adults, what they want to do later, they will tell you entrepreneurs, 10%. Just 5 years after, 54% of them are telling you the same stuff. All of that help us to create the ecosystems that you represent, help us to basically make the Station F still something on the course of Le Louvre, Tour Eiffel, and they go at Station F. That's all what essentially the Americans, but also our tourists are doing. So the Station F is actually a proxy, an amazing icon of these revolutions happening in France on the good side. We also have with Vivatech, and you shouldn't forget that, and you should take full benefit of this. Now that we lost the Web Summit, which is going to stay for 10 years in Portugal, we need to make of the Vivatech the place to come when you want to come in Europe. So that for the facts, but let me talk to you about something which you in London, you're supposed to know well, which is the money. For the first time last year, it was more money raised in the VC than UK. Something that you and I Albin, 2 years, 3 years ago, we not even thought about, right? Now, better than that, the amount of capital which has been deployed over the last 5 to 6 years has been actually multiplied by 6 in France. So essentially, we're creating this virtual circle where we reallocate capital, we create icons, we basically an ecosystem which is vivid, and we got also a benevolent place. So that's the good news, but there is few things that I want to share with you to challenge your minds, and actually is part of the subject here, that we're still lagging behind the mega runs, big times. The run above 20 to 50 millions compared to UK, hence the place here, 25 to 39, the run between 50 and 100 million, 6 versus 11, and the run above 100 million, 3 to 6. We also need to produce, in consequence, much more unicorns, right? We've got 2. Yes, you can talk the all good one, Talent or Criteo, but the truth of the matter, we've got 2 versus 14 in UK, 54 in the rest of Europe, and 141 in USA. We also have too few exits when we compare to the UK, which is something we need to be getting concerned about. And we need actually the corporate world to go time after time on this one. So the theme of tonight is absolutely relevance. I was not trying to show you these figures to basically tell you this, that's a lieu commun, but I was trying to tell you what we can do about it. And what I want to show you is also a few good signs, which is why I still believe that the decade ahead of us is the decade for France, no matter what. Essentially, our ecosystem is maturing very, very quickly. Just 3 or 4 years ago, the deal side on seed were essentially close to 1 million. They become now closer to 2 or 2.5 millions. The deal size in the Serie A were around 4 millions, and now there are 13 millions. So the money is pouring, we're professionalizing that, and it's all getting good. We've got also new generations of unicorns on the go. You may see a long list, and you notice here Klaxoon, which is going to talk to us in a minute, right? But you got also Scality, Ledger, which we saw, Eveneos, and Symphony, right? All of these have been raising more than $40 million, and we expect them to be able to target this unicorn. So 12 is not enough. That's why we need to pool much more resource on that. We got also, we leave Munir Majoubi to talk to you about this, a government which is definitely committed to the scale-up. You need to understand that the Loi Pacte, which is under review by the Senate right now, is going to give us further more means to basically do so. We at Business France in the agency have got the privilege to share, right? We've got also a few cool programs that you should notice and know about, right? The program Impact, for example, either in China or in the US, brings you for 5 to 10 weeks to basically discover, prepare your entry in the market in London. And I want to make sure you talk of that with Pierrick and Raffaella because I think it's very cool. We've got also the ability to welcome in France some of this international scale-up, right? The Deliveroo, May.com, which is going to talk also tonight, but also Revolut and so on have been deciding to come in France very often to essentially build their go-to-market strategy in Europe. Now, once this is said, I'm going to give you tonight, and I will close on this, a very concrete and simple example about what we're doing every day, right? The government decided to basically give me a mission with John Chambers, our French tech ambassador, to work on scale-up. So over the summer, better to be on the beach in the south of France, right? We went in California. We meet all of these boring VCs. I am one, so I can talk with it. And we tell them, guys, you should come to see what's happening in France. Guess what? We give them, and we choose a particular date, the 5th and the 6th of December. You with me? So it's in between the 1 and the 8th, and we invited to come over. Now, the beauty is that no one dropped from the list. No, it cost me a few phone calls, right? Many phone calls. I had to promise some good bottle of wines, but all in all, they all came in, right? And what we did there is something that I want to put to your thoughts, or that I want you to think about or reflect on. We decided to show them the good old Station F, being welcomed by both Roxana as well as Xavier Niel, doing a tour. Then we essentially add testimony like the one of Mr. Gourlet, the head of Symphony. And if ever we can have him here, David, right, we should absolutely come in. Because he's going to show you how he decided after a contest of 13 countries with EY, having a shortlist of 3 countries where to position his mobile development in outside of the US, where he couldn't basically recruit the people and retain the people, he decided to put France on top of the list and actually came in Sophia Antipolis building his all R&D center there. Fantastic story that I want you to know more about in the years ahead. We also show them INRIA CNRS PSL, Paris Sciences et Lettres, and we showed them some of the great company, right? Dubuc, which is a star, the guy from Open Classroom. He started at 12, 11th, a Ledger. But also we went to Bionex into good old Haussmann Place, 74 Faubourg Saint-Antoine, the best of France. You see out there a red bricks chimney, and you know there is an Hermès atelier, an Atelier Hermès, which is doing the best Birkin bags, right? That none of you can afford, but that's essentially what they're doing out there. They're selling it to Chinese and Russians, which is all good. And in the front, you've got an accelerators, Bionex, where they were trying to build the Bionex to the future. We also gave the floor to the Fennel of this world, the Joe Shanders. We also attract the VC, the top VC. Ron Conway, a legend, was here. Frank Siddell from NEA. Each and any of the representatives of the top VCs. We essentially had up to 120 meetings with French startups. And in order to avoid the classical French the French issues of having essentially not working together, we asked the French VC to show to the Americans and the foreign VC the top two best companies where we could love to have tickets of 20, 30, 40, 50 millions. Doing so, we organized 120 meetings. We also did attract the LPs, which are fueling all the ecosystems. In the room, we had $500 million of investment with more than 120 dedicated to the VCs. All of that works extremely well. TechCrunch came here, challenged us about how France wants to become a tech giant. The feedback has been unique, particular. Matt Truck has been very talkative about the fact that he was impressed by the caliber and the quality of the events. And yes, that shouldn't basically get out of these rooms, but despite all the challenge, right, the President Macron decided to give us a little of his time to welcome these people which at their own cost decided to come to France, 20 VCs, 20 LPs, and essentially address in a very thorough way the questions that they had about France and the future of France. So that's just an example. All of these guys are raising their hands when I'm asking them, guys, are you going to invest in France? And I told them that I'm going to take photos and I'm going to remind them a year from now. So that's the beauty of the social networks, right? So we'll do something with it. No, a huge success. That's an example. So thank you so much, Albin and the French Tech team here in London to organize that, because I think it's really the theme, it's a strategy, it's profound. I'm sure that my preferred minister, Monir, will basically talk to you about how we need you and I to be thinking a lot more about inclusion into what we're going to go in the future, because you and I were the spoiled kids of the systems, and we recognize that, so that we make sure that it's not anymore a revolution, but just a reverse, and that it doesn't stop this revolt, legitimate revolt, to do the entrepreneurial revolutions using my good old Victor Hugo, which is essentially saying la révolution est précisément le contraire de la révolte. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. Thanks for your amazing support for the last 3 years. So I just want to follow up on congratulating the team. Again, the French Tech London is run by a team of people like Christian Fatras is on his way from the French embassy with Munir, they're on time. He's an economic counselor. We have Sébastien Carbon, also in the room. He's the deputy managing director of Business France, and he has helped a lot for the last 3 years too. And last but not least, we have Audrey here. She's the one. She's the one organizing everything about the French Tech in London. So thank you, Audrey. I want to give a round of applause also for Mazar on the left side. It's the French, the leading French accounting firms, and they are our partner, and they are represented tonight by Vincent Rezouk. If you want to stand up, Vincent, and Nicolas Carrel, but I'm not sure he's in the room tonight. But so thank you. We'll have more events with our partner next year, so please stay tuned. So what's coming next? So the organization tonight, we will have a round of what we call fireside chat, okay, of great speakers, founders and CEO of French scale-up, ad tech, collaborative meeting platforms, e-commerce, and obviously fintech. We'll have also the perspective of leading a late-stage VC firm, Eight Road Ventures. So let's start. We're starting with Raphael. So please come on stage. And
can you hear me? Yeah, okay, hi. Listen, please. Good evening. Surprised because we were supposed to have somebody else, but I'm glad we can make it. So I want to thank Pascal because he's basically told about 90% of what we're about to talk tonight. So that's done. We're going to have 5 minutes to talk. That's all good. Lucy, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm Lucille. I'm an investor with Eight Road Ventures, and I think, as Albin said, we're mainly focused on scale-up investing. So I was incredibly happy to join tonight. The funny story is we actually have our Christmas party tonight, but when Albin said we're going to talk about scaling up, I thought that's such a great topic because it's clearly the next frontier for France. I think we've seen in the last few years great startup activity, and now is really the time to scale up. So I thought such a great topic.
Indeed, indeed. How many countries are you covering today?
So Eight Roads is basically a global fund. We have teams in the US, in Asia, and in Europe. And in Europe, we cover all of the region. I personally spend most of my time in France.
Good, good to know. All right, and you were not invited at that incredible Versailles Palace. We're going to need to fix that. Okay, so we heard a lot about scale up. I want to get a little bit more details about what you guys see typically when you invest at scale up stage, and give us a few examples of what you've seen recently. Typically, what are the sort of the barriers that you would have seen in scale up trying to grow, you know, from startup to scale up, from scale up to the next stage? And because you guys are investing in there, what are the typical sort of things that you've seen so far?
Yeah, so as mentioned, most of what we do is investing in scale-up. So we spend a lot of time thinking, what are the barriers? How do we make more of those great stories out of Europe? And I think for a long time, the complaint from entrepreneurs was around capital. And it's still, we could still do better in terms of providing VC capital to the scale-ups. But I think, as we've seen with Pascal, it's less of an issue now. So I was just looking just in 2018, 23 billion of capital going to European startups and scale-ups, compared to 5 billion 5 years ago. So you can see the ecosystem growing. And so I think capital is being solved. The other next big topic when you speak to entrepreneurs is talent. And I think talent remains a key topic for a lot of our entrepreneurs. And it's also finding the right balance of who do you bring at which stage of the company. I think there is this great quote by Nicolas Brusson from BlaBlaCar, like, you're always trouble because if you bring really senior people, you're really scared about destroying the culture and the DNA of your company. But on the other hand, if you don't, you're going to potentially hit a wall because you don't have that experience of people that have done it. So I think it's at least what experience from our portfolio is about finding that balance around bringing new talent and growing your own inside the companies.
Right. I want to take a step back because I don't think we discussed this, but I think it's an interesting point of view. How do you define scale up at Eight Roads Ventures?
Yeah, so the way typically we think about it is saying you've passed the product market fit.
Right.
So you know what you're selling, you know to who. You're probably not iterating on the product anymore, but you're really into that scaling of the organization. So typically the issue is not so much like, is there demand for what I'm doing, but more how do I build an organization to really go to market with that. And so that's where a lot of the topics become, scaling into new countries, scaling the organization, growing the talent, and making sure you can address the opportunity that typically you've uncovered in the early stage.
You don't have any revenue threshold or anything like this. It's flexible, isn't it?
Not really. I think we've seen from the slides, it's typically where you start raising, 10 to 40 million rounds. So that's typically the stage. But I think it's much more around, when the mindset shifts and it's like, I know I have something here. Now, how do I make the most of the opportunity in front of me?
So that's a very good transition to our second question, which is, so basically you're covering the rest in the entire world, but you're focusing particularly in Europe and in France. One of the things that we've seen so far is that and Pascal referred to that, the variety between different ecosystems from Europe, from the UK to France, but also from the US to Europe. How do you see, why companies have a hard time evolving and scaling versus, what we see around the world? So we took example Silicon Valley. We can talk about China as well. Various different sort of ecosystem. What do you see, for example, with the ecosystem in Europe? What do you think?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was also looking at that slide showing only a few unicorns still in France, and I think there are a few things, right? So one is definitely culture, and so it's about having this ambition of aiming higher the whole time. And I was reading that quote from Daniel Ek, the founder of Spotify, who was saying, fail fast and move on. And I think it's about creating that atmosphere in your company, like let's try things, like let's take risks, and it's fine if you fail. And I think more broadly as an ecosystem in Europe, it's still a culture that is pretty nascent, and that probably other ecosystems have more that to say it's fine to fail. Let's just iterate and get that momentum. That's one thing. I mean, another thing that comes to mind is also bringing liquidity around, along the way. So as you all know, the entrepreneurship is a very long road, especially now less and less companies go to IPO. And so I think it's quite important also to make sure that founders have a view to get some liquidity along the way so that they're not pushed or tempted to sell potentially too early. Just because they have the opportunity, and I think that's going to be also a good challenge for us as an ecosystem in Europe to provide that.
And you guys help along the way to support them to go through that route?
Yeah, it's something we think a lot about because we're late stage investors. So typically we come founders can be already 6-7 years in, and so if you ask them to take much higher risk, they also have to balance their own risk reward appetite, and so having the ability to provide some liquidity along the way, I think helps.
Good. I love your reference to failing. Roxanne that we mentioned earlier, Station F used to bring back 10 years ago Falcon, which is a conference that were only focusing on failures. And I thought it was always great to have people that are not speaking about how they succeed, but what are the failures that they had, the recipes they had, and learn from that from everybody else. So learning from failure is always interesting. Right, moving on to this, lessons in growth. So we talked about a few things that you guys do to help and what you've seen in the ecosystem. Who's typically the support system that you can see from scale-ups? Because of course we talked about talent. What do you see outside? What do you typically see are success recipes from those scale-ups that you help to sort of grow? And how can we also talk about that ecosystem? How can we get closer to build it? We have always that differentiator between the people that are spread across in the European system versus a centralized ecosystem. What do we see, for example, in the Valley or somewhere else? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a main challenge that we have in Europe, that great companies can come from everywhere, and we see it all the time. It's not only Stockholm, Berlin, Paris. It's Malmo, it's Lyon, it's Ghent, Belgium, and I think on one hand it's great, but on the other hand, I think when you compare to things like Silicon Valley, there's such a great mentorship and culture of bringing back the talent and the knowledge, and I think it's just really hard for Europe to get that because people are very dispersed. And so I think we together as VCs, but also organizations like French Tech and entrepreneurs that have succeeded, I think we all have a responsibility to say, how do we make that ecosystem a bit closer? How do we make sure some of the talent goes back, some of the knowledge sharing happens, the mentorship, and I think we see more and more initiatives like that, and it's really great. I mean, certainly as in terms of our portfolio, we think about bringing people more together, and it's not only founders. I mean, it can be like the CTOs, the CFOs, the CMOs, and building those communities and kind of recreate that aspect that you would have typically in the Valley or in Israel, where the ecosystem are just very, very small
and centralized.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of companies you've seen that are sticking out, that have gone through the journey of coming from maybe a smaller town to a main city to get the resources and then trying to get back in there? Have you have any example in your portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, we have a few investors in Neo Technology, which is a Swedish company from Malmo, and now very global. Moved also to the States, but grew into globally from there. I think Made, and you're going to hear from Philippe, is another great example of a company very international from day one, doing an excellent job at scaling inside Europe. So I think we start seeing a lot of those great stories now of companies scaling out of Europe into Asia, into the US.
Okay, I think we want to close on a few topics. One of them, I like that metaphor that we talked about earlier about the PayPal mafia. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the story of the value from PayPal mafia that grew into the next generation of investors, basically reinvesting in the young companies. And so, who's our PayPal mafia in Europe? Who's our PayPal mafia in France? Well, how do we get those guys to come and reinvest and support the scale-ups in the world? So you have your own idea on that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking about, that effect of people basically coming back to the ecosystem, creating the new generation. And, I could think, I mean, we start seeing it in France. You have the Exalid mafia, right? Because, Algolia, Dataiku, all those amazing companies out of one, basically one talent pool, which was Exalid. But I think we'll start seeing more and more of those, and that's exciting.
And not necessarily only out of unicorns, right? We always talk about unicorns, but there's also the midterm scale-up types that are actually already giving back to some of the early entrepreneurs. We see that. I started with Camp time and time again. We have 700 alumni right now. Some of them are at scale-up stage, some of them have exited, and they're coming back to support the young guys. So it's good to see that the European ecosystem, whether it's fragmented or not, is still trying to pull together to get that done. So it's a positive message to close on that. All right. I think we are almost out of time. There was a lot more we could have talked about. One of the things that I'm sure our next colleagues are going to talk about was GDPR as well. How do we control the data? And I'm happy that I don't have to talk about that one. So I'm going to leave that on the others. But on that note, Lucy, I want to thank you very much, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Raph.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucille. Thank you, Raph. So we started with the first panel, the perspective of a late stage investor, and now we are going to move on to more like the scale up fireside chat. But the thing is that I think I'm suffering from something called presbycie, and I can't read my notes. And I forgot about my friend Philippe Rodriguez. So please join. So Philippe Rodriguez. Philippe Rodriguez is the managing partner of something called like a new kid on the block in Europe, like an investment firm, investment bank. He's a tech advisor for startup and scale up in Europe. And is also the writer of a very outstanding book called Blockchain Revolution. So if you want to know something about blockchain, cryptocurrencies, he's the guy tonight. So Philippe is going to share an overview of the European scale-up ecosystem, and with a focus on France and the UK, obviously.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have it for two. Thank you very much. I'm going to be very short tonight because I don't have so many slides as Pascal has. I'm sorry, you beat me up. Sorry, I have only one slide. This is what I'm doing tonight. I just want to give you a brief overview of what we are doing in Europe. Actually, Avolta Partners, you get it. It's a tech bank. We help companies in tech in Europe to do basic things like fundraising or sell the company, and we do also some strategic advisory to corporate in Europe. For instance, we help the Bourse de Luxembourg to spin off some of their blockchain activities right now. We have been fundraising for one of the companies I've seen in your slide, Pascal, Cityscoot, 41 million euros this year. It was a big deal. And we are helping those companies to grow in Europe, only in tech, and with a team of passionate tech bankers, 25 people, based in Paris, London, and Lisbon. This was the advertising part of my presentation, and it's done. Actually, we are doing some data also, because we love to understand what's happening on the market. So we love to having in a big database everything from companies who are raising more than 1 million to up to 15 million, and we do this for Europe. And we buy out all the data we can buy concerning the revenue of those companies, the growth of those companies, how many people they have, and we compute everything to understand better the market. So this is what we are doing. You can have all our reports. Some are free, some are not, but some are free. And for the one who are free, you can have them on our website, in Volta Partners, and you will see a lot of data on this. So someone is switching the slide for me, right? Or I have to do it, I don't know. I see you. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so a few things about the scale up. I wanted just to give you a broad view of what's happening in Europe right now. This is the cohort of people who have been getting in the stage of scale up in Europe, starting in 2016. So it's 478 scale ups for Europe. And if you look to what's happening to France, Germany, and UK, well, what you can see is that basically when we look to those three towns, Paris, Berlin, London, we sort of like half of the market. It's 41%. We have 41% of the market that is concentrated into three very big tech hubs in Europe, Paris, London, and Berlin. Paris and London are very different from the other countries, from the other cities, like Berlin and other cities. Why? Because when we look to Paris and London, and we look specifically to scale up, we can see that they have like 65% of the scale up in those cities. So there is a sort of a concentration into Paris and London, into their nation, and that is not what we can see in other countries like Germany, in Italy. This is not something we can see in Spain with Barcelona and Madrid, of course. This is not something we see in Portugal. This is not something we see in Scotland. But it is the case in France and UK, where there is this big concentration in two big hubs. Well, if we look to those figures, what we can see as well is that if we look to what are the main difference between France and UK, basically for two figures that we look, those are the people who have raised more than 20 millions into the desktop of time from 2016. So 35 million, this is the median for those fundraising. There is no difference between France and UK. So in the same time, in the same period of time, Paris or France was like 33, and the median was 34. So it's not making any difference. That means that it is the same amount of money that is coming from investors at that period of time, at that stage for companies. All right? So because sometimes we hear, oh yeah, because they are raising more money if they're in UK versus France. This is wrong. It is exactly the same amount of money was raising at this time, at this stage of the company. Concerning time, how fast people are raising money from let's say Series B and Series C, because we are more talking about Series C here, 15 months, and again, nope. No difference between France and UK. It's exactly the same figures for France and UK. So you are not moving faster in UK than in France. Exactly the same figures. So this is something that I wanted to show to you. And obviously you can say what are the difference, because there is at least one difference. It's the number of scale up in UK and France, and in Paris and London. This is very different. It's almost 3 times the difference between France and UK. And so if we look very quickly to the reason, I will sum up with 5 different points. I don't have any slide because I have almost burned my quota of slide. I have only 1 slide, so I cannot have any slide more. So I have 5 reasons that are very important in that topic. The first one is how we see the people before the scale-up, because Of course, this is obvious, but you have more scale-up if you are a good company in the stage that comes just before. This is obvious, but this is very important. And we have to say that we are doing a very good job in France for that. And mainly, what we can say also is that there is a lot of company, there is a big reservoir, and Pascal has shown some of the slide where you can see that there is a big reservoir of companies that will move next year and the year after into this scale-up stage. This is the first thing. Second thing will be financing, where we can see that there is a lot of efforts in France that have been done for financing the company from the stage B to the stage C, and I'm not going into this because Pascal has covered this point already. I want to cover another point that is very important when we see the difference between scale-up in France and in the UK is how the companies are global or not. And there is two aspects of that. The first aspect is how people are investing in those companies. And we see that there is a big difference. Albin was mentioning into his article a few months ago that the difference was like 30% of the investment was for international investors in UK versus 15% only in France, which is a big difference. But also, if you look, and it's a second way to look at the things, but if you look at the team and how the entrepreneurs are where they are coming from and how they are doing in UK, you see that most of our customers in UK are people coming from different countries and not only from UK. And this is a big difference. And when we look to the scale-up and we look to the origin of those companies or origin of entrepreneurs, we can see that there is a big melting pot here, big entrepreneur melting pot in London that is very efficient. Last point, but not the least, it's exit and liquidity. It was quickly covered in the last panel. And of course, we have mentioned the fact that the IPO was not so much a big success for now in Europe, but also we can cover the point that in the corporate in France are not buying so much those companies for now, and that we have to move faster in that. And this is very important into this aspect of scale-up to make sure that they receive more investment and that we grow them faster. So this is what I wanted to do concerning say about the scale-up, just to cover the scene. I'm here with my partner Arthur. I don't know where he is, somewhere in the room. So he's very shy, that's why. Oh no, he's here. Okay. So we are very happy to answer your question during the drinks. There is drinks, right? Okay. Okay. Just make sure. I don't want to oversell. So so we are happy to ask any question. We are happy to help you if you want to raise some capital. And we are happy to sell your company if you want to sell your company. And I'm here. I'm just sitting here. See you later.
Thank you, Philippe. So let's move on. Munir will arrive in 5 minutes, so we're all good in terms of timing. So let's move on. Please welcome on stage Sophie Goossens. She's a digital media expert and consul at Reed Smith, and she's focusing on IP and tech. And she's going to interview tonight Jules Maviel. He's the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Augury. So it's all about ad tech. Sophie, your turn.
Is this working? Yes, it is. Perfect. Welcome, Jules.
Thank you.
Welcome in the French Tech London living room. We are having a fireside chat, just the two of us.
Nice.
So, Jules, you are the CEO of Augury?
Yeah, Chief Strategy Officer, actually, to be.
Chief Strategy Officer,
yeah.
but one of the founders.
Yes, I am.
What is Augury? Can you tell us a little bit about the company?
Of course, I can. Augury is actually coming from, the name Augury is coming from the ancient Rome. It's a practice of interpreting the flights of the birds to generate omens, so to see the future. So that's what we try to do, actually. Augury is enabling companies and users to make informed choices. So actually, the company started in 2014 in London. So we are 3 French founders, but we were all living in London when the company started. And my co-founders had actually an insight, which was that companies are relying on bad and inaccurate data when it comes to actually engage the users on mobile, and all companies want to engage the users on mobile, but actually they are all relying on bad data. And from these insights, they actually started to work and develop data from raw signals that could allow companies to understand the full journey of the users on their mobile. Of course, everything is based on consented data, and we are going to talk about GDPR.
Not too fast.
But that's
For
what
now,
that's
you're
what we do.
crystal gazing into mobile data. That's
Yes.
what we want to know. So 2014, so you're 4 years old,
Yes.
and the journey of Augury between 2014 and today. How big is the company? You started, like you said, 3 co-founders.
Yes. So
And where are you at today? And what was the journey between then and now?
So we've been supported by investors, so from the industry, private investors as well as VCs. So Ventec and ID Invest are at the capital of Augury. We raised a bit more than $30 million in total from the beginning. Today, Augury is a 300 employees company. We made, the year is not finished, but we are almost certain, because we see the future, that we are going to make 100 million, a bit more than $100 million in revenue this year, 50% coming from the US, actually. And what else can I say? Yeah, we've got 6 offices in the US, which is our biggest market now, and we launched the office 2 years ago in the US. So
Wow.
we worked with more than 900 brands, and our technology is embedded into more than 8,000 applications and mobile websites.
So 6 offices in the US. I'm guessing an office in London.
Yes,
Where else in Europe?
we've got 60 employees here in London. We are 110 in Paris, which is our biggest office now. An office, 2 offices in Italy, 1 in Spain, and 1 in Germany coming actually next month.
Okay, so truly a European startup.
We are, yes. So France is now, I would say, 15% of the revenue, roughly. So that's not our biggest market. We've got the most employees there because of the fact that the tech team and the product team is in France.
That was actually my next question. Is you said your biggest office is in Paris, and you define yourself as a French startup. Why Paris is, I mean, other than for historical reasons, is there one reason in particular why you have chosen to hire the biggest amount of people in Paris?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we started in London because that's where we were, and now and then we moved to Paris when it was time to really scale the tech and the product team, because actually we found that it was much easier to hire engineers and to retain them and scale a team in Paris than in London. So that's what we found. And in terms of quality of the employees, in terms of engagement, that's what we found, and that's where we managed to scale the team.
I think it's the second time tonight that we're hearing that Paris is such an amazing place for talent.
It is. I mean, we need data scientists, we need engineers that have a strong background, and we found them in Paris more than in London, to be honest.
And what do you think makes France an attractive proposition? So we heard all about how France now, the image of France is changing, has changed a lot over the past few months and years.
Yeah.
What, if someone was to come and speak with you about where should I establish my startup, what do you think makes France special?
That's a good question. I think the image of France, as we saw in the previous presentations, changed a lot in the past years. I think now it's much more attractive for everyone, and including our own colleagues who are based in the US. And I think the perception of us when we open an office in the US is much better than it was a few years ago. I think in terms of talents, again, we are a very well-positioned country. I think that the perception of the companies, like American and European companies coming in France, is much better than what it was in the past. But I think that the fact that we have more and more scaling up companies coming from France makes it easier when we go to the US, to other markets, when we establish our companies. I think we have, it's much easier to hire people being a French company than maybe in the past. I think that we no longer have, I mean, all the people that we have in our offices in the US are American people, and the fact that we're a French company is no longer a problem. And the fact that for us as a data company providing insights to marketers, to publishers, the fact that we are a European company, a French company, is a kind of good label when it comes to privacy, because we saw that it can be a concern for many companies. And I think the perception of Europe with GDPR is much better now than for other countries and other companies.
Okay, so kind of a quality stamp on the company in a way.
Yeah, I say that the fact that the privacy again is something that Europe is concerned about. I think that 70% of the French people are concerned about the usage of their data by brands. So it's something very strong in France and in Europe, and that's something that all the companies in Europe have at their heart. And with GDPR, we have this image of protecting the user's data and make sure that the value exchange between the users and the brand is there, and that when the user shares their data, they do it because they understand what they do, and they do it because they've got something in return, and not just because it has been bundled in 300 pages of terms and conditions where you just have to tick a box and you don't understand what happens. And I think that's what we try as European companies to reestablish and
So I want to stay with France just for one more minute before we move on to discussing more the data and the very interesting topic that you raised, the GDPR, and how that is affecting the image of the company. But if we stay in France for a few more minutes, is there anything that you think France can do better in order to attract companies like yours, and maybe companies that have not been founded by French people?
I think that's what has been done so far with the French Tech. This kind of event that we are all attending is great. I think we can go even further by organizing more of those events where we try to speak English, and we even if I sound like I'm French, I think. The fact that we can try to melt a bit more the cultures is a good thing, and we should definitely do more. I think the perception and marketing is very important, and that's true that we have ups and downs, and we will have ups and downs in the coming weeks and months and years probably, but still I think it's much better, and that's something that we should keep doing. And then it's about facilitating the life of the startups, for sure, and facilitating the lives of the startups that want to scale up. And this comes from an environment where I think we need more big companies in France. And this comes from the exits, and we mentioned the fact that we are still missing a lot of exits for French companies. And this comes from the fact that we don't have enough big companies that are able to consolidate startups and scale-ups in Europe. And that's a shame, because the natural exits, it's good to be a startup because you're agile, but comes a time when the company grows, when they need to and probably in their life cycle, they will join a big group. And most of the time, they will join a US company, sometimes a Chinese company. And especially when it comes to data, we should all be concerned, and we should all want that our data and everything that we all work on when it comes to fintech, food tech, whatever, that everything, or at least some of our companies, stay European, and that the know-how, the savoir-faire stays in France. And so I think what we need to, where we can be better as a country, is to support startups that scale up and to help them to really better work with the big companies, big European companies. Okay. And the telcos in our environment, they are big European and French telcos, that can really endorse those topics on which we are working, and they should, I think, work more with the startups, and I think the government can still make an effort by mixing more the startup scale-ups and the big companies.
And do you think that the problem you just described, is that because Europe is basically 28 different markets that still have some fragmentation? Because you were talking about China and the US, which are those massive, gigantic markets. Do you think that the size, how Europe is organized, is playing a role in that?
For sure, definitely. I mean, concretely, like to take a very concrete example, I was in a meeting yesterday with my colleagues, and we are talking about the next countries that we want to open. And Netherlands is one of the next countries where we want to go because it's very close, but we don't speak the language, so we will have to have a team located there. We need to find people who are speaking English because that will be the common language. It's the same for Germany. We want to open offices in the Nordics, but we don't know at all those countries. So we are like, okay, maybe Oslo, Copenhagen, we don't know. Apparently, people don't speak the same language neither. So it's, you see what I mean? It's becoming very complicated. And the reason why we are doing well in Italy is because one of my co-founder is Italian, actually. So it was easier for him to establish a business there. So the language is complicated and makes things not as easy as when you've got a country with 300 million users, potential clients who speak the same language, for sure. So that's also an advantage that the British companies have over the French ones, because the big market, the big US market, is more accessible to them than for the French companies. But that's not something we can change, I think. I'm not going to ask anyone to change their native language for English to be more competitive.
I don't think that would work.
But maybe just practicing more English for everyone would be maybe good.
So now let's move on and continue to talk about, I don't know if we want a GDPR, that's always a word that I sometimes find that it scares people, but let's just talk about data and how it affects what you do. So maybe just, can you explain in like 2 sentences really basically how your company, I mean, you basically, and tell me if I got this wrong, you are focusing on mobile, so you're focusing on the data that the mobile users are leaving the traces on their mobile. You will analyze it and you will make sense of that for brands. So
yes.
It's ad tech.
Yes. So yeah, we turn data and we provide data and insights to enable the companies to make choices in their decisions. And we turn those data and insights into activations. So activation can be user engagement, so marketing campaigns, or audience revenue optimization for their audiences on mobile, so mobile applications or mobile websites, for example. That's what we do.
So obviously a lot of personal data, and we know that the European landscape, the legal landscape, recently changed. And I know you have some thoughts about that. So the first thing I want to ask you is, do you think that the landscape as it is today is fit for purpose? And how does a company like yours engage with that? What was the journey maybe for you for adoption of GDPR? Has it been a big problem? Has it been an opportunity, or a little bit of both?
As a technology and data company, we've been thinking of this like since the beginning, since 2014 actually, and everything starts with the consent. So we don't do anything if we don't have the consent of the user. And when I say consent, it's not like ticking a box randomly when you land on a page. It's really like a short explanation of what we're going to do with the data. And that's an advice to all the users. Everyone should read those 10 lines that explains what we do with the data, and we've got a yes and a no button that have the same size, that are the same color, and that are in the front page. And this is clear, and this is what GDPR requires, and this is something that we do from the beginning. And that's, so for us it was not a change, it was a change for a lot of companies, obviously. When you do that, you see that actually you've got around 40% of the users, that's our case, who said, yes, I want to share my data, because I got a value exchange for that. So the value exchange is, for example, an access for free to an app in exchange for targeted ads, for example. Or no, I don't want to share my data. As long as the user understands what they do, then I think it's fair. And all the concerns around privacy come from the fact that actually the users are not aware of what they do or what is being done with their data. And when you've got 100% of opt-in rate or consent rate to share data, it's because there is a problem. It's because they don't really understand the value exchange and because you don't really share the information. So for us, it didn't change a lot because that's something that we had at the heart of our company in our DNA from the beginning. But clearly, there is a trend where companies really need to adopt GDPR, and we see that it's not something that is well adopted yet, even though it's live from the end of May. So it's still an ongoing process, and it will take a long time for all users to be aware of what is GDPR, how they can understand what we do with the data, and the fact that they can erase the data, they can always opt out, they can move their data from one place to another, and everything.
So we've seen that the topic about protecting personal data is just starting. Like GDPR was a little bit ahead of the curve, and Europe has been really very much like leading the way. But other countries now are all adopting, or at least thinking of adopting, similar legislations. But I think when we were talking before this about some of the challenges that you faced, you also mentioned how sometimes it is difficult to compete with people who are doing exactly the same thing as you, who might not be abiding by the same rules just because they're not located in the same country. So can you tell us a little bit about that, and how do you see the future maybe, and the kind of challenges that you went through, and how this is going to evolve in your mind?
Yeah, of course. I think GDPR is a good thing for sure, and we all believe that because we all need to protect the users. But the fact is that Europe, as you said, is ahead in this regulation. And for example, when we go into the US, the fact that we are a European company, we have to, and I think it's a good thing again, but we have to display a consent notice and to ask the permission of the users to collect signals and to generate data from their journey on their mobile. Because we are a European company, because we gather data and we bring it back to Europe, that's what we have to do. US company don't have to do that on the US users. So that's a big difference. And again, as we have 40% opt-in rate, we are missing 60% of the opportunity on the US market. So that's a problem. And when we look at what's happening on the French market, you see that the CNIL, who is regulating and who is in charge of applying the GDPR law in the French market, is going after French companies. All the companies that have been notified by the CNIL today are French companies, and if you look at what they do against what other companies do, they are not more to blame than other companies I would not name here. So that's something that we need to consider. We cannot, just because we want to protect users, we cannot limit the expansion of the French companies. So we need to be careful with that, and that's to come back to your previous questions about the advice or recommendation that I can make. I would say that we need to be careful with what we do with French companies and the signals that we send to the companies that try to do their best in front of tech giants that are dealing with a lot of data, and who are not following the same rules as the French companies. So we should support French companies more than just stopping them from doing what they can.
Okay, so maybe is that a kind of a signal to the regulators to say, like, maybe help the French company get compliant instead of just taking, making examples and maybe go after the big guys.
Exactly, yeah, because it creates a lot of bad reputations for our French company, and the French companies, and the ones who are benefiting from that are the big US companies, and I think we could do better.
Okay, so I think we're running out of time, but just the last point is, given that augury is the art of reading omens, can you give us your omen for the future of your company? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I'd love to be on the slide that talks about the French scale-ups, French next unicorns for next time, the French unicorns. So that's we really believe that we need more French unicorns, and especially when it comes to data. So because we can't leave the data being regulated by other companies, we have to have a French champion. So that's what we want to do in a couple of the next couple of years. We want to be a French unicorn specialized in mobile journey marketing.
So the French unicorn of quality data and secure data and safe data.
Consented data.
That's a good way to end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Jules. So just to, as a reminder, that's very interesting because Jules used to be in London for about 2 or 3 years. Then he came back to France to scale up Augury. So I think it's a very interesting fact in the context. By the way, thank you, Raf. Raf is a former Apple employee and just explained me how to increase the size of my character. So now I can read my notes. So I know who's next. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Raf. So next, please welcome on stage Jocelyn Bendris from our partner Mazar. And she's going to interview the perfect blend of French international entrepreneur working in fintech. It's Philippe. Philippe, welcome on stage. Philippe Gelis. He lives in Barcelona, he's in London too, and most of the time in France, I guess. So, please.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want Philippe just maybe to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, and maybe also Cantox, because you're the CEO of Cantox, so obviously that makes sense.
So quick explanation. It's maybe a bit too technical, and I don't want to be too boring tonight. So Cantox, we're in fintech, but we build solutions quite sophisticated for businesses to fully automate anything related to managing FX and foreign currencies. We started 7 years ago. As said by Alben, we have the headquarters in London. We have the back office in Barcelona. So we are living both Brexit and Catalan nationalism independence. So it's quite an interesting dynamic. And I spend quite a lot of time in France too. We are 80 people. We have raised 20 million, a bit more, with French VCs, Partech Invest. So we are really London, Paris, Barcelona. Profitable. It's very unusual in fintech nowadays. So this is a real milestone, more than fundraising. And happy to be here tonight.
So as we're here in London, I think we can't pass having the question about the Brexit, obviously. So what's your view on the Brexit? I would say for Cantox and fintech, but also in general for the scale-ups today.
So first I will tell you a story about the Brexit referendum. If you remember the night of the referendum, it was June 2016, I think. All Cantox management and co-founders were in Palma de Mallorca for the wedding of my co-founder. So we had drinks until 2 in the night, and it was still quite clear that it was going to be a leave, so remain. So we went to bed, and at 6 in the morning, we started having the phone ringing. People upset, clients calling, so quite a nightmare. We woke up, we went for breakfast. My co-founder was going to marry, also super upset, and his future wife started noting that he was much more focused on client and the company this very same day than the wedding. So at some point, the tension started really increasing, but really more due to the Brexit than the wedding. But we managed it, and finally it went well. So opportunity or challenge for us both. As I mentioned, we are specialized in managing foreign currencies and in particular foreign currency risk. So Brexit for us is, I would say, some kind of administrative friction, useless one, but basically what we have to do is we are licensed in the UK with the FCA and we passport to European markets. Now we will need a second license in one of the European markets to be able to serve European client. It's not necessarily very complicated. It just takes time, some money, some friction, so typical thing you don't want to do because you want to focus on your business. But on the other side, more volatility, more business for us. So I will say that in the end, it's not so bad. So we will not lobby now for the Catalan exit, but I will say it could eventually be good.
talking about Brexit and the regulations and more in general, we hear a lot about the regulations on the fintechs, particularly because they took, the opportunity from the banks who were truly regulated, and they tried to find ways to buy the market and fringe the market. So, how do you see all these questions around the regulations on the fintech today?
So,
going forward?
first to give a bit of context, very often we criticize quite a lot Europe. If the fintech industry exists nowadays, it's mainly thanks to Europe and the Payment Service Directive from 2007. So Europe has really been a big promoter of fintech. I will say that during a long time, the main problem was not regulation, but regulators. Why? Because if you exclude the UK, where a regulator are used to regulate very small, mid, and large financial companies, in any other country, being France, Germany, they were almost only used to regulate banks. So when they started having to regulate a company with 4 guys in a bedroom trying to build a financial company, they were completely lost. So even if the regulation was reasonably clear from the beginning, regulators were really struggling when it was about implementing. I will say that nowadays it has evolved quite well. In France, for example, there is a team specialized on fintech company, quite responsive, quite knowledgeable. When you have questions, they answer quickly. If you need to go fast, they move quite quickly. So I will say that now regulators are reasonably well prepared, and regulation is needed in fintech. And what we cannot do is have no regulation or very low regulation, because in the end we manage money. And when you manage money, your clients, being retail or B2B, so you want to make sure you're reasonably reliable, robust, and solvent.
Okay. So you're talking about your clients, so maybe we can move also to some type of business and strategy for Cantox. We see that a lot of traditional banks and traditional players in the banking sector are buying fintechs because they want to have access to a technology or to a special market. How do you see these strategic moves for yourself, for Cantox, but also for the scale-ups, and what does this mean really in terms of market and business?
So first, it's natural. I mean, in any industry where there is disruption coming, at some point incumbents start understanding that they need to do something, they need to move, they need to innovate. Banks are really been designed to manage risk. And we can say that innovation is at an extreme and risk management and culture at another extreme. So if you are designed to manage risk, it's extremely complicated to innovate and to move fast. So I think they came to the conclusion in the last 2 years, at least I have experimented a real change in the industry. They understood that they need to innovate, to learn from fintech. And learning can mean partnering, investing, acquiring. So the trend has started. I think we are still very early. We have seen some acquisitions, most of them of fintechs that are still relatively small. There are some exceptions. We have also seen, at least in France, the first divorce. So it's also part of the process. But I think we'll see more and more M&A in the space for the next 10 or 20 years. I mean, we are still in the very beginning, and seeing that banks, at least if we take the largest ones, are still generating massive profits. So I mean, they have the ability to acquire and to invest. It's not like some industry where the incumbents are basically making no money. So even if they want to acquire, they cannot. Banks don't take BNP or Société Générale, they probably do between 5 and 10 billion profits a year. So I mean, they have the ability to acquire, the ability to invest, and I think it makes a difference compared to some industries where basically they cannot.
And do you think for the banks in particular, do we have now a view on, does it make really sense in terms of their business model and their ability for working together? Because obviously we always think the bank, the traditional bank, it's regulated, it's tough to move forward, and then the fintech is on the other side, wants to move faster and bigger. How do you see that working? Is that, in your view, is that working properly? Does it bring the results expected, synergies and also on?
I will say what they start doing now, or at least they try, is to start partnering. So they approach you, they want to build partnership or technology partnerships or any kind of, name it with knowledge sharing or approaching clients together. And when they start seeing that really the clients value a lot the product, the technology, so there is some cultural fit, which means we are able to work well together. This is when I would say you start having some tractions. What, in my opinion, doesn't work and will hardly work is acquiring a company just because you like a piece of technology and thinking that then you will integrate and deploy. This usually doesn't work. You really need to have some kind of fit between the teams, client validation. In my view, it's really the only way to do it, except when it's defensive moves. So sometimes you see some of them, they acquire a company because they just don't want this company to be acquired by a competitor.
Mm-hmm, that's true. If I come back to your strategy, and you're standalone right now and you're not within a bank, obviously you created Contox based on a software, so a high technology on the foreign exchange. How can you make sure, as a scale up or as a company, you're able to still be a top actors and a top players on that market, thanks to research, development, partnership? How do you manage just to be always on the top of the technology, which is obviously the basis for you as a Contox?
So, in some way, we have created a new category of software solutions in our space, in B2B FX, or at least this is what they say in the industry. The way we manage innovation, I would say, is very simple and in some way very chaotic. What we just do is, anytime a client is asking for something, we really take it into account and decide if we think it makes sense to build it or not. So we don't have any kind of internal discussion, debate, idea generation, this kind of thing. It's anytime clients ask for something, it's basically shared internally, and we decide if we think it makes sense to build it. And usually we speak to other clients, we try to make a validation, a benchmark, name it as you wish. But it's basically taking into account any client demand. I don't think too much in B2B about this idea of having an amazing idea that no one had before, you just build it and then you go and sell it. Even more when what you build is complex, so you cannot just develop something in a couple of weeks and test the market. Usually it takes months. So I think really the better way to innovate is to be constantly speaking to clients. So we have a sales team which are constantly in contact with clients, and you can get a massive amount of valuable information. We don't believe a lot also in surveys or this kind of thing you can do online. In my view, in B2B, it doesn't really work. What you need is to speak with them and to listen to them constantly, and having a co-founder which is in the sales team constantly with client, I think makes also a difference.
So it's kind of co-construction with your clients to find solutions and make sure you respond to their needs.
It's very unusual in B2B to have a company which has a need which is not reproducible with other clients. I mean, usually the problems, the challenges are very common. So when you have a demand very specific, this is something you can deploy with other clients.
Okay. Bearing in mind, you created back in 2011, I think. So what is the main ambition today for you and for Contox in terms of global reach or products, or what's the next strategic move for you and how to manage it successfully?
So now it's interesting because when we started, really we were direct competitors of banks. So basically offering something reasonably similar, but with a better digital experience and much more competitive prices. Then we started building much more sophisticated software automation technology. And now for a couple of years, we have banks approaching us to be able to deploy this technology with their clients. So now we are very close to launch with 2-3 banks partnerships with very often clients much bigger than what we are usually serving. And we think our global expansion, or out of Europe expansion, will be done through partnerships because it's much leaner, much easier. You don't need to deploy, to rise and deploy a lot of capital. You just grow internationally with your partners And we have always been in favor of this kind of approach, which is better than raising a lot of money, try to deploy in a reasonably profitable and lean way to avoid at some point being trapped, as I see many tech companies will be, by having raised way too much money and not being able then to deliver what they promised.
Okay. And then maybe one final question with regard to your development. If you, for example, today you were to partner with someone or a company, what type of company would that be?
You mean in the banking space?
Yeah. Would that rather be a traditional French bank? Would that be?
I will say the cases we have now in the pipeline, which are very advanced, are only global players, leaders in FX. It makes, in the end, it's as challenging to partner with a small bank than with a large bank. But then when you partner with a large bank, the reach you get is much bigger. So we think it's better to focus on a limited number of high potential partnerships because it's very time consuming. Mm-hmm. And also I think what's very important is that sense it's first not to look after them. Mm-hmm. So our strategy has always been when they will start understanding the value of partnering, they will come to us. We don't go after them because you can lose a massive amount of time. The problem when you want to partner with banks is they have a lot of people, they name innovation manager, everything. They are paid to spend time with startups to speak, basically. So you lose time, and you lose business, and you lose focus, while they are paid just to come and speak with you. So this is a massive risk for, no, but really, fintech, this is a massive risk. I mean, you can spend so much time speaking with innovation manager, and then what you learn is they have basically no influence at all in the bank. They can, no, but really, they cannot decide on anything. They can basically open a door, channel you to the right people. But in our case, when we speak with banking partners, or we directly speak to the relevant team, which in our case is FX, capital markets, and quickly to someone with seniority, but we never speak with innovation people because you are really losing time. No, really, I mean, it's...
Well...
It's a reality.
Yeah, I think that might be the conclusion of and a good advice actually is just to make sure you know who you talk to. It just make sure they are appropriate in a sense to what you want to achieve. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move on. Please welcome on stage David Rowan. He's the chief editor of the founding... yeah, well, he was the founding editor of Wired UK.
Hello.
He's a writer. Hi, David.
Enchanté.
Enchanté. Oh, he loves France. You love French tech. I know that.
Un petit peu.
Un petit peu, yeah, I know that. So, and tonight he's going to interview Philippe Chenieux, the CEO of Made.com.
Hello.
Thank you.
Bienvenue.
Thank you. Where do you want to sit? Here?
And this is going to be a beautifully short conversation because Philippe is missing the Made.com Christmas party.
Yeah, they're waiting for me.
And you are missing the wine and the beer because we're running a little late. Philippe, Made.com, 8 years old now, 500 staff.
Yep.
You raised about £40 million earlier this year.
Yep.
I think the total that you've raised in dollars is about $140 million.
Yep.
And you keep heading towards that profit line, which is very unfashionable. But you're also about to go into 14 different markets.
Exactly.
Most of which, 12 of which are in Europe.
Yes.
But you're in a really difficult space. You are sourcing, making, delivering physical furniture, chairs, tables, other things for the home. What did Made.com get right that was so hard for everybody else?
I think that was the initial vision of the founders. So this company has been founded back in 2010 by 3 very talented young entrepreneurs and Brent Oberman, and with a vision that by mixing creativity is very important for us, data, technology, we will be able to bring a much better proposition to consumers. And that was the initial vision, and that's the vision that we are delivering today. So what Made is about, Made is a direct-to-consumer design brand. Everything we do is to develop unique, beautiful products at a great quality at a fair price. And to achieve that, we have partnered since the very beginning with a design and a creative community, especially in Europe, especially in London, especially in Paris, to get those unique, beautiful products. And behind the scene, throughout the technology, throughout the data, we have the ability to bring to consumers much greater product than the competition. And so we've been delivering that since the very beginning. Very early, great success in the UK. The ambition has been since the beginning to create a European leader to start with. And so we expanded the activity in France just 2 or 3 years ago after we launched in the UK, and everybody's told us, that's totally crazy, you need to validate what you are doing in the UK first. But that was the idea that we had. And since then, we are now operating in 9 different countries as of today. And by the end of next year, we will cover all the rest of European market. So we will be, at the end of next year, in our segment, the design company that will have the greatest reach in Europe, offering to our designers the ability to reach the greatest number of design-savvy consumers across Europe.
So the proposition for consumers is persuasive. Every day there's a bunch of new products hitting the website. You're cutting out the intermediary, so the prices are highly competitive. But it's a logistics business too. And you have to source from a long way away from Asia, from other places. How did you avoid getting crushed by this?
Interestingly, at the very beginning, because we raised a lot of money, but lately, when we started the company, the ability to invest, to get investors that will invest in e-commerce with some stock was very difficult. And so we had a lot of difficulties to convince, back 5, 6 years ago, investors to invest in e-commerce when you have to have to put some stock. So we had to find a model that could work for our customers and that could also work for our balance sheet. And so the constraints of cash we had at the very beginning gave us the obligation to be innovative and to think differently. And so from that constraint, we built behind the scene a supply chain model, an operating model, which is very different from the traditional players. And that is now working better and better for our consumers, but also that has been proven to be very efficient financially.
You were essentially a UK business. Last year, I think 60% of the revenue was UK, but next year it's projected to be 50%, and after that, 30-something%. Are you giving up on Britain at this moment of darkness?
No. No. The UK is still the #1 country. It's growing super fast, despite the retail environment. But it's our ambition to create a leader for tomorrow in a context where a lot of things are changing in the retail sector, and especially on the back of a change of consumer behaviors. We have a real window of opportunity as a brand to create that leadership. And so it's throughout internal expansion that we will create this. So it's not about giving up the UK market. We've been incorporated in the UK. We are headquartered in the UK. UK is super important for us. But what we have is, but to fulfill the ambition, we need to be international. We need to be the European leader that we have in mind.
But you are in the process of turning your Paris office into a hub for all of Europe.
Yeah. So the second market we opened was France. It's now the second largest market within our portfolio. And for many reasons, we decided to have Paris as our European hub. First reason is because that's the second largest market. The second reason for France specifically, when we look at the Paris center of our customers across Europe, the Paris center is in Lille. And so you can calculate it in many ways. It's always in Lille. And Lille is a fantastic place to make some supply chain, to make some logistic, because you have a proximity of ports, you have a proximity of different countries, but you have also a lot of expertise in Lille in terms of supply chain. So we have, by nature, positioned France as a European hub, and now we are in the process to strengthen the team in Paris, to hire more and more people that will operate the mainland Europe activities. And Paris also is very interesting for us in a sense, because not about the tech, but about the creative hub that it represents. And in our segment, decoration is getting closer to fashion. And I think that's very interesting for us to be close to the fashion industry, especially in Paris, because there are some talents that are, can bring a lot to what we want to do as a company.
But when we in London hear of yet another company moving the core of its operations to continental Europe, we get a bit defensive. And we remember that David Cameron had this really good idea to put a vote to the public. How much has this influenced your decision to move to Paris?
It's part of it, in a sense. I think it's about how do you manage your risk as a global or international company, and the risks being a lot around your capacity to attract talent, to attract the right people, and to make sure that you're going to get them for the long term. And we've seen quite a lot of movement since 2016. And I think when you want to mitigate that risk, having a second hub that will be positioned differently is a good way for us to have a capacity, whatever the situation, to be in a situation to attract the talent we need to grow the company. So on the back of our mind, there is also this kind of a risk management that we've been through and we analyze, and that has been a part of a decision, but not the only one.
So let's fantasize, and let's just imagine there were another public vote, and let's just imagine this idea was kind of put away. Would you change your strategy?
No. Again, the choice is around the size of the business that we're going to have in the long term in mainland Europe, and that do require to have people on the ground, do require to have people that understand what's happening across the different market, and that do need to have some local management. So it's a business decision that probably has been accelerated by a couple of political decisions, but fundamentally it's a business decision, and for a lot of reasons, France and Paris are the right spot for us.
So let's just fantasize again that we can get some sort of decision from our politicians. And let's just say this B word becomes a reality. How does that change how you manage supply chains? Is there going to be a separate UK supply chain and a separate continental Europe supply chain?
So we have a dedicated plan for Brexit. A part of the business is to move boxes across borders. When you have a border that is closed, that's more complicated. Let's put it that way. So we have set up two different infrastructure in a way, one being dedicated for the UK, the other one being dedicated for Europe. So we had the obligation, and we are in the process to finalize that, to really segregate what's linked to the UK activity to the European activity.
Sounds really complicated. I thought
doesn't make us
London
life easier. Doesn't make our life easier.
I thought London kind of was winning on the international talent mix, the hybrid skills.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that Paris is now equal in that supply of talent?
I think it's getting much better than I used to be. I used to scale another business in the past, which was called Mythic. It's still called Mythic. So I've been doing all the story. And so 10 years ago, it was probably much more complicated than it is today to find, especially the kind of diversity you need to build an international business. And having people with different profile, people coming from a different background, people coming from different countries, is absolutely mandatory. In the company, in May.com, we have 500 people. We have 35 different nationalities, and you can't make an international business if you don't have that diversity. So London, for that, is a fantastic hub because it's a really international hub, and I think Paris gets there, but probably lagging behind.
So Paris is on a roll.
Yeah.
You know, I was very excited to visit Station F and 42, and
Yeah.
lots of
You
the
s- and
startups.
you can hear more and more people talking.
Lots of the startups
speaking,
that
speaking in
Pascal
English in the
was
street.
celebrating.
So something is happening here.
But what does Paris need to automatically be the first choice for European entrepreneurs to base themselves?
It's talent and diversity of talent. In a position like me, most of my time is about finding the right talent to scale businesses. It's all about when you have something that you know how to operate, that you have an offer that you know that is working, when you want to accelerate a business, it's all about how you structure, and the structure is through, and what is running a company is the people that are part of that company. So talent, at the right, with the right background, with the right expertise, people that already have been through that journey is absolutely critical to get company like May.com to the next stage. And that's where I think a lot of people like me are really focusing their time to find the right people.
So we're going to close in a minute because your party is buzzing and they need the boss there. You are the guy who got lots of people hot dates running Meetic, which was then sold to the Interactive Corporation. What are the key lessons you learned running what became a very big, successful company that you think people here should appreciate as they try and build their scale-ups?
You need to be fully concentrated about what is the purpose of a company, the DNA, what's the core idea, and to be very, very focused on delivering what is the core of your proposition. And you have a lot of ability to be defocused, diverted. You can do a lot of mistakes, like doing an IPO, for instance, and that creates a lot of difficulties going forward. So what is very important and what is probably the most difficult when you scale a business is really to be extremely clear about what is your value proposition, your brand, and to work for the long term and not to be diverted with bumps that will happen, whatever the situation, in the short term.
Last quick question. You're running a very complicated business, Philippe. Not just 500 human beings, each with their own needs, but this very complicated international supply chain. What's the one problem in running the business that you'd love to solve?
Oh, there are many.
You've got some smart people here, they can help.
Listen, I think what makes complicated expanding across Europe is complicated. It's also a chance at the end of the day, because at the you have, if you make it successful, as it is complicated, it's a barrier to entry, and there are the usual suspect from the US doesn't get it very well, and you get protected in a way from that complexity. So I think grabbing that complexity is absolutely key. Lowering the pain to go through it will be extremely welcomed.
Philippe Chaigneux, merci.
Thank you, Philippe, for the flexibility tonight. Thank you, David. So now let's move on. Now it's about a collaborative platform, Klaxoon. So please welcome the Chief Evangelist Officer of Klaxoon, Marie Barbesol, and she's going to be interviewed by Vincent Rezouk, the Head of Data Privacy at Mazar, our partner tonight, our sponsor. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mary, I think that we're the second last obstacle to the end of year party. So we need to be short.
Yes.
But we need to be efficient. Firstly, maybe you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, so my name is Marie, and I am a Chief Evangelist Officer at Klaxoon, which can be weird, because in fact my role is to be like tonight in front of you and to be able to explain what is Klaxoon and to explain the value of Klaxoon, the history, and what you can do with Klaxoon.
Okay, so then I think this.
What is
the
Klaxoon,
obvious
so?
question is, what is Klaxoon?
Do you know Klaxoon first? Yeah, yes, we have one of our users just in front, that's true. In fact, Klaxoon helps to be much more efficient when working in groups, in teamwork. So just one question, do you know how many years you spent in meetings? Too much. Too much. In fact, in France, it's 16 years. And yeah, that's why I'm always asked the question, 16 years. And there is two key figures to bear in mind. That the first one is that 70% of the time, you do other things than being focused on the purpose you're gathered all together. You do your emails, you just working on the project and so on. And the second figure is that 50% of the people, they can't express themselves. They can't manage to express their ideas. So with Klaxoon, in fact, when you're in a meeting, you take what you have in your pocket. So it could be a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop. You just have to connect to Klaxoon. There is nothing to download or to install because it's just a web app. And you're able, when you're on a meeting, to share your ideas through brainstorming, for instance, through quizzes, votes, surveys. There is a bunch of activities to be able to express ideas. And for instance, our users, they tell us that they're able to have 100 people participating during meetings. Yeah. They're also able to take 3 times more decisions. And the time of the meeting is cut in half. So it's very, very great.
That's very interesting. So we were talking earlier, and you said that you were traveling from Brittany.
Yes.
So no confusion, it's not Britain.
No, not Britain.
That one remains in the
yeah.
EU.
Mm.
So can you tell us more about this experience in Brittany and having a scale-up made in Brittany?
Yes, it's true that we've heard a lot tonight about being in Paris, being in large cities. And we launched, in fact, the product and the company in 2015, so just 3 years and a half, from Brittany, from Rennes. And it was it's really great. And in fact, when we launched the product, it was one of the challenge was how to attract people in Rennes. So I remember business nights like this one in Paris, and people telling me, you're crazy, you're not going to be able to attract talent in Rennes. And well, we succeeded because we began being 5 people in the company, and today we are more than 200, and we will hire 150 people next year. So you can attract people, you can launch a startup, and now it's scale up, being in Rennes and not being, in fact, in big companies.
Okay.
In big cities, sorry.
But I believe that now you're also in big cities.
Yeah, because in fact, today, 3 years and a half after the launch, we have more than 1 million people using Klaxoon in 120 countries. So everything from Rennes and also from Paris, Lyon, and New York City. But the most of the people, of the 200 people, are in Rennes. So we are really proud, in fact, to have this kind of local location and to be able, in fact, to interact and to have an international impact on the globe. Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm quite curious to understand how you build a project in Rennes, and then suddenly you go to New York and you have a collaborative platform that is based on French culture, I would assume. How do you do, first, to attract talent, and second, to also adapt to the American culture and the New York culture that is sometimes very well known for being different,
yes.
to ensure that you manage to reach all the challenges that you have in this country?
So, first of all, in France, in fact, it's really good to work, for instance, in those kind of country, in Britain, in Rennes, because you can have a better work balance between personal and professional life. So we have a lot of people that are really interested and really great talents that are really interested in working in Rennes rather than in Paris for French ecosystem. And for the US, it's true that when we launched the office in New York, it was a challenge because we have a strong history and a strong way of doing things within Klaxoon, and we wanted, of course, to adjust it, to adapt to the US market, but we also wanted our DNA to be part of the creating the meeting revolution within the US. So we found something that we managed to find French people yet settled in the US, so being able to be close to the mindset of the US people and being able also to understand how we wanted to be, how we wanted to run the project and to run the business within the US, but in kind of French mode. So it was really challenging to find those people. We spent time to find those people. So we have part of the people in the US that are French people working in the US for a long time, and also American people. And there is a kind of mixity that is great. And so we managed to hold this business in the United States, right?
So one challenge, one tick box. So now, more generally, if you had to describe all the challenges that you went through whilst scaling up.
There are lots.
So let's start with the beginning.
Well, in fact, you do step after step, in fact. So when we launched, there was the problem of the talents, and also 3 years and a half, we were 5 people. No one was knowing Klaxoon, so just how we can manage to succeed in our ambition. Since the beginning, we had this big ambition to make the world Klaxoon. So, in fact, we made a lot of exhibition. We made a lot of also apply for prizes and so on. So the year after we launched, we had the first CES Innovation Awards in Las Vegas, which was really, really awesome, great, because it was a recognition of the market, and it was also a consumer prizes. And we are a B2B solution, but we really have the consumer DNA in the product, in the way we do things, and so on. So it was really great to have this first milestone in the history of the company. So this was a first challenge, and the second one was, of course, the fundraising question. So we had 3 rounds right now. We had one in 2016 with just 5 million euros, but it's a lot. But we had the third one this year with much more, so it was great. It was $50 million. And we also paid great attention not on having not only financial investor, of course financial you have when you want to raise money, but also to be able to have real partners in order for us to be much more aware of the ecosystem, to be much more aware of the market. So we found investors able in the United States since the first round, which was really great, also in France, and also people well knowing the Asia market, to be able, when we want to enter the market, to get good advice, good knowledge of the market. So this was the second challenge that we had.
Okay, and so second challenge. So then, if you had to describe how you managed to, because you became so big in such a short amount of time, so if you had to explain how you maintain the work efficiency within the teams whilst becoming so big in such a little time, how we describe that?
I think the last people that you told that from Med.com, you told Philippe, I think it's your, I don't remember the first name. You told that it's really a way of also keeping your DNA, and it's a real challenge when you hire new talents to really keep this kind of DNA. So we managed to do it by, in fact, keeping, for instance, like a flat hierarchy. We really want, in fact, to have strong teams, to empower teams, to trust your teams, in fact, and to be able to make them responsible for the job. So it's part of the DNA. It's part also of the DNA of the product, of course.
Exactly.
So in fact, we use a lot, of course, Klaxoon. We use a lot for daily meetings, of course, for weekly meetings, for managing the projects. And in fact, we try to always to focus on teams. And you know, there is something that we say within our company: nothing can stop a team that works efficiently. So I think that it's we try to apply that within our company. And when people come to the headquarters at the Klaxoon campus in Rennes, we have more than 3,000 people this year coming to the campus, and they can see how we organize and how we work. And in fact, they can see that just by using Klaxoon, they can do the same within their company, no matter what the size is, no matter what their job is. They can succeed, in fact, in finding the way to empower the teams and to be able to better work all together as a team.
Okay, so now it's quite self-interested, the next question. I'm sure other people might be interested, but because Mazars uses Klaxoon, so we're quite interested to know about the next steps. What's in the pipeline? What are the next steps? And how are you going to become even bigger?
Well, the last fundraising that we made in June, I think, yeah, it was in June this year. In fact, it's for two kind of things. First of all, we really need to make the R&D grow. We have 50 people right now today. We have a strong R&D, for instance, able to work in this summer with the R&D of Microsoft, because we made a partnership we announced in last November. So we really want to make this team going bigger, to be able to provide also other kind of tools for our full suite of apps. So it's very important for us. And of course, to be able to open new markets. We have the US, but we also have, you know, we have 120 countries with Klaxoon today. Of course, mainly with most of the CAC 40, because we have all the CAC 40 people, companies using Klaxoon, but also we have people just by word of mouth, they just knock at the door and say, okay, I've just heard about Klaxoon. I'm, for instance, in Switzerland, or I'm, for instance, in Copenhagen, and I want to use it. So there is a real something very viral about Klaxoon, but we also need to invest on those countries. So I think the next step will also be to be able to open new countries and to be able to make the world Klaxoon as we wanted.
So probably
in the beginning.
One question of interest: London soon?
I hope. That's why maybe we're here with my colleague Charles.
Okay. So
of course.
There's going to be a lot of discussions.
Yes, tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So if there was one takeaway that you wanted the audience to keep in mind after your this discussion, this fireside chat, which one would you like them to?
I would say trust your teams. Trust your teams, because before coming to Klaxoon, I was working in big companies. I worked 7 years within L'Oréal, and I work also with big companies when I was in consulting. And since I am in Klaxoon, I really see the power of a team. And when you have the great way to organize yourself, when you enable anyone within a team to be able to express their ideas, to be able to put his own stone to the team and to the project, you have strong teams, and you're really able to. There is no barrier, in fact, anymore to what a team wants to do. So just trust your team and empower the team, and make it possible for them to better work as a team.
Great. Sounds like a good conclusion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vincent. Again, thank you, Mazar, for your support tonight. So we are coming to an end for this conference. Again, this event is under the high patronage of President Emmanuel Macron, and tonight we are lucky to have Mounir Majoubi, our French Minister of State for the digital sector, so Mounir, if you can join. Mounir, I was thinking of a non-boring way to introduce Mounir. Okay, so I'm not very good at protocol. So, and I'm going to speak in French a bit. Do you know this very nice movie with Louis de Funès? It's called La Folie des Grandeurs. And at some point, le roi d'Espagne congédie Louis de Funès. Et Louis de Funès dit, mais je suis ministre, je ne sais rien faire. Bah, la différence avec Mounir, c'est qu'il était entrepreneur avant d'être ministre, donc on sait, quoi qu'il arrive, qu'il sera un entrepreneur toute sa vie. Voilà, merci pour les closing remarks.
Bonsoir à toutes, bonsoir à tous. Hi everyone. I really love the last roundtable because I'm fond of Klaxoon. I'm using it a lot. I'm a client of Klaxoon. And I am also completely fond of Vincent Rezouk, who's one of the most fantastic person here. But I would like also to thank Albin, because the last few days you've seen what is happening in France. For weeks, there are a lot of debate in our streets. There are a lot of debates in schools. There are a lot of debates in universities. There are a lot of debates at the parliament. And then last week, we also had the terror. So I questioned myself, should I come? What is the purpose to celebrate the startups? Maybe celebrating the startups might be less understandable at that time. And then we spoke, and I was convinced that my place was to be here with you, because your place is to have an influence on the future of France and on the future of UK and the relationship we have between our two countries. So thank you, Albin, and thank you to the whole French Tech team here in London who have organized this meeting and who have organized this fantastic night. And I really, really love the talk, not only the last one, I was also there for the previous ones. Merci à vous. Alors, de quoi je voulais vous parler? Ce soir, je suis venu vous parler de la France. Tonight, I'm here to talk about France. And you see, by talking about France, we'll talk about the startups, we'll talk about the citizens, we'll talk about the people, and we'll talk about the purpose of life. What's the purpose of being the best in technology? Why do we run? Pourquoi tu cours? Why do we want France to be one of the best digital ecosystems? Why do we want to make Europe a champion in digital and a champion in artificial intelligence? If you have no purpose, there is no answer to this question or no acceptable answers. 2 months ago, there was this international conference in Paris called the Internet Governance Forum, where President Macron tried to differentiate multiple purposes, saying that now in the world, there is a Californian model, there is a Chinese model, and there is a European model that is at the moment emerging. And we do have the power to influence this model and to build this model. And he tried to characterize that model. What is this European model? And in this European model, there was this certitude, this necessity of being the best. So performance is part of this model. But purpose, meaningfulness, is an absolute necessity of this model as well. So you want to be the first because you want to change the world around you. You want to be the first because you want to change the life of people around you. You want to be the first because you want to change the planet around you. And that's why, for the last 18 months, our government with the president organized multiple events and reorganized all our digital strategies around these 2 core values, performance, humanity. We organized the AI for Humanity Summit in Paris, where one of the real commitment we had was to create an international organization to have experts being able to talk together about ethics in AI. Last week, I had the chance to go to Canada and sign with Prime Minister Trudeau the first international agreement between France and Canada to create this GIEC, this group of experts, international group of experts for AI. So when we believe strongly in things, you have the capacity to attract others who share this same idea. But you know, there are countries that really don't want to join us. With Canada, we opened the door of this agreement. And already a lot of European countries decided to join us, but other neighbors of Canada really, really, really didn't want to join us on this platform. And on the Asian continent, only Japan has expressed an interest on this platform. Performance and humanity. We also organized Tech for Good event. The Tech for Good event was a way for President Macron to deliver a point of view to all the tech leaders from abroad. 80% of the audience was from the US. They were the CEO of all the tech company we use. Why was it important? You know, French people, they love technology. They love them so much that in France, Google has one of the largest market share in the world. It's the only country where they nearly have 100% market share. People love to use Google. People in France love to use Facebook. They love to use Amazon. They love to use all these platforms. But at the same time, they're also questioning their purpose. At the same time, they're asking, what are they doing for the common interest, for the interest of everyone? And the actual debate we have worldwide is all about purpose. I don't know if you've seen, but it's the beginning of a revolution, but Google made a public statement this week saying that if France wants to continue to create a French taxation system dedicated to large digital companies, they would pay it without a problem. That's the first time that they made this public statement. The last 5 years, they were saying that we should negotiate with our neighbors, and once we would find an agreement with our old neighbors, they would respect it. So there's something happening. There's something happening because the people want it. Because people can't understand that the product they love is not participating to the common interest. They can't understand that the product they love is not treated at the same level as the company they love that is in their street. Because in France, a local shop is paying 25 to 30% for the taxes. So everyone has to be treated on an equal way. That's what we tried to build the last few years at the EU level when we said that we wanted to create a digital single market that has to become a same playing field. It's really, really something that is expected by the people. And with what is happening the last 3 weeks in France, the last 4 weeks now, I can't count them, there is a will. You know, I see very positively what is happening with the Gilets jaunes. I see it positively because if you listen to what is said by all these people, these are voices that we were not used to hear. These are voices that we were not used to see on TV. But these are voices that are completely used to use Facebook. Last week, I made public the barometer for French digital usage. Nearly 100% of the citizens between 18 and 25 have a smartphone connected to the internet. 100%. All social categories everywhere in the country, in the rural, in the small areas, in the social deprived areas, in the bourgeois areas, everyone has one. Under 40 years old, it's nearly 90%. So 2018 is the first year where people are completely all using, where a full mix of 2 or 3 generations is using internet every day. It's the first year. And it changes everything. It changes the way we organize power. It changes the way we organize consumption. It changes the way we look at security. Now, when you go to any Gilets jaunes group on Facebook, you can see that they can organize a video live every night with 200,000 people looking at it. You can see conversation with 100,000 comments under only one post. And these people are just asking for one thing: more equality, more capacity to be listened. Sometimes they're asking for crazy things. But my answer is not to say it's crazy. My answer is say, oh, behind these things that you are asking, there's something that is very legitimate. And what I want to offer is a discussion in the coming weeks and the coming months so that we can really give an answer. And that was the main sense of what President Macron said to the population a few days ago as an answer of all this questioning. So what's the role of the French tech? What's the role of the technology? What do we want to achieve in 2019? Why are we there tonight? We are talking about scaling up. But as I said at the beginning, scaling up for what? Scaling up, why do you want to scale up? Why do you want to be the first? Why do you want to go abroad? Why do you want to be the best? Why do you want to reach so much consumer everywhere in the world? You want it because you have a purpose. You have a purpose to change the life of your consumer with your product. You have a purpose, like at Klaxon, also to change the life of your employees. You have a purpose to change the life also of your neighbors, of your territory. You have this will to change the life of everyone. And this question of performance, this question of talent, and this question of inclusion is all the same. So what did we do in France the last few months? We arrived in power 18 months ago to make France a haven for growing up startups. The clear success of the French tech the last 5 years was to make nearly more than 10,000 startups to emerge all over the country, making France one of the most active startup ecosystem. You know that every year there is figures for multiple sources placing London as the first ecosystem and Paris as the first ecosystem, and we are questioning which one is the real one, but we are at least number one or number two. Who here believes that France, Paris is the number one in the room? Thank you. And London? Okay. So for you tonight, we'll say that we will look at the figure who said that London was first. But still, this afternoon I was with 25 companies here, UK companies, that were looking at Paris not as a way to relocate, but as a way to co-locate. And I believe that Paris and London has a lot to share, and that startups and growing up startups have a lot to win, having one feet in London, one feet in Paris. One feet in London to look at the rest of the Anglo-Saxon world, one feet in Paris to be completely connected to the continental Europe. So there's no B word, there's the Brexit. Brexit is coming. I had a meeting with all technology ministers and all ministers linked to technology in the UK for the last 18 months. We are preparing ourselves for the after Brexit because there are no ways that we could succeed in this complex world if we are not together in what is happening. GDPR is a fantastic opportunity for Europe. GDPR is a very balanced regulation. GDPR is all about performance and protection. GDPR is all about taking care of the people and the impact on their life. And after the Brexit, UK will have to commit as well to protect personal data and to stay within this agreement and these rules, because these rules, they are creating protection that no one would accept to not have anymore. So what have we done with this fantastic ecosystem of more than 10,000 startups after 5 years of the French tech? We decided with President Macron that it was time to accelerate, that it was time to have great leaders and have impactful startups, meaning switching to a scale-up strategy. So how do you help companies to scale up? How do you help the French tech to scale up? First is about talent. And I must tell you that Klaxon was one of the first scale-up I visited more than a year ago. And some of the difficulties they encountered, some of the problems they had at this time was an inspiration for the regulation that we've just enacted recently. To tell you one example, starting March 1st, it will be very easy in France to recruit a foreign talent for any digital company and any innovative company. We will be switching from a 2 to 6 months delay before receiving an acceptance from the Interior Minister to 2 to 3 weeks, meaning that once you've identified a talent in Egypt, a talent in the US, a talent everywhere, to be a developer, to be a coder, but also to be an expert in digital marketing, then you will be able easily and fast to recruit them. Access to talent is really important. Foreign talent, but also national talent. And as a lot of you know, we have a lot of talents, and we graduate a lot of talents in France every year, and they are moving everywhere in the territory, but also everywhere in the continent, but also everywhere in the world. So we want to do our best to also have them stay in France. But we also decided, with the research minister and the superior education minister, to double the number of engineers that will be graduated in France, to be sure that we will always have enough talented people to join our companies. But we have also decided to make a bet, because there's another condition if we want to make this balanced vision of innovation with a purpose, is diversity and inclusion. Diversity is a way to accept that there are talents everywhere in the territory, but that everyone can bring their value to a company. This year, we opened 10,000 new seats in what we call Grande École du Numérique schools. Grande École du Numérique schools are like 42 at a smaller scale. People who enter these schools could be a mother of 42 years old, could be a young guy 17 years old, all together in a class of 15 to 20 people. And during a period of 6 to 9 months, they would be educated to one job in the digital world. There are a lot of coders, but there are also a lot of e-commerce assistants. There are also a lot of office managers. So we have opened 10,000 seats this year, and the first effect we see in companies we recruit them is fantastic. When they arrive, yes, they're not engineers, so they need to learn more. So the first year when they come, they're not as effective as the others. But after 1 year of training within the company, these people that nobody believed they could join the digital industry, these people that nobody believed that they would one day spend their day in front of a computer and create value, these people are creating a lot of value, double their salary, change the life of their family, and change the life of their territory. So we strongly believe that diversity in the talent pool is also very important, and that's why I want to say to all startups here who question if there are talents in France to recruit and they will come, the answer is yes. You will have diversity of talents, you will have more engineers, you will have people from abroad, but talents is about everything. We talked, one of the person who was talking during the discussion said that a key for success for scale-up is the diversity of the employee who has the culture of scaling up startups. I believe it's right for the employees, but it's also right for the investors. And that's also another part of our strategy for the last 12 months, is to attract more foreign investors, more VC who have already invested in very fast scaling up startups. Because we do have a VC culture in France, and this VC culture is not completely hasn't been at the highest level of accompanying startups to scale up. But by creating a more diverse pool of investors, we are starting to create this. We have created a common fund with Israeli fund, with American fund, and now I hope to announce soon the creation of co-investment fund between UK and France. And we believe that will also be a part of the success of scaling up our ecosystem. And one last ingredient for the scale-up architecture is to have the best French tech communities everywhere in the world and everywhere in France. And that was a commitment we made 18 months ago. It took time to make it. And the way we organize it, the way we shape the new vision for the French tech communities everywhere in the world was London. The model was London. We looked at how the community here was functioning. We looked at how successful it was, how connected it was to the local ecosystem. And that's based on this image of perfection that we have set it up, the new framework of creating French tech communities all around the world. We have announced the creation of a fund for French tech communities that would help all French tech communities everywhere in the world to create community events everywhere with one goal, to make French companies, to make companies from abroad who want to work with France and look at France as a market or look at France as a way to develop themselves as a fantastic and welcoming country. So every French tech communities is an ambassador communities. And tonight I really want to thank the London French tech community because you've been so warm to all the French companies who arrived the last 10 years. You've been so warm to all the people who visited you. You have made this place a fantastic place. And everyone I've met this morning, since this morning, was talking about how fantastic was their first encounter with you, Albin, and with all the team. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And yes, startups could also have a very strong impact in the life of all the people. And when I will get back to France, my message is that between the revendication of all these people that are in the street right now and between what we are doing together to make successful companies that will create value everywhere in the country, there is a very strong link. And this very strong link is at the heart of the European model of innovation. So thank you very much, everyone, and please have a fantastic night.
Thank you. Thank you, Munir, for this inspiring closing remarks. And also thank you for making the time being in London tonight in such a challenging political context. So that's the end. I really want to thank again the team. They've been working hard on this event for the last few weeks. Obviously, Audrey, the project manager, I'm not sure where she is. Thank you. And as you can see, French Tech is very international because Audrey is from Belgium, as you know also. Thank you, Audrey. As you know, in the community, we have verticals, themed verticals. So thank you, Alexandre Covello and Candice Lemaire. They're working on corporate innovation. Alexandre Salem, Roxane Damalin on the gaming vertical. Pierre-Edouard on the IoT. Benjamin Viard de Lozenio for the health tech group. And Marc Avedition for FinTech. So thank you again. And there are loads of people also helping Audrey for the last few weeks and today. So I want to mention Carole Leizet, Caroline Jacquard, David Johnson, Guillemette Simon, Harriet Pickering, Jonathan Hollis, Lorraine Herbelin, Leila Marzouk, Victoria Johnston, Camille Rougier, Emmanuel Arandarzik, Nicolas Parodi, Cyrus, pardon. Je ne sais jamais comment dire ton nom, Cyrus, c'est pas facile. Hein. Yoré Martin et tous les volontaires qui nous ont aidés ce soir. Donc, merci encore. Many thanks. He was outside also waiting for Munir tonight, and I really want to thank also Sébastien Carbon. He has built a lot for the last 3 years on the French Tech community. So thank you, Sébastien. I don't know where you are, but thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, okay, let's celebrate now. You have drinks and food outside until 1 a.m. tomorrow.